Most people believe financial crises start with a dramatic event: a market crash, a bank failure, a shocking headline that appears out of nowhere. That belief is comforting, because it suggests crises are sudden, rare, and external. But it is wrong. Financial crises almost never begin with visible collapse. They begin quietly, inside systems that still appear stable. By the time markets fall or institutions fail, the crisis is already well underway. What people experience as the beginning is usually the final phase, the visible phase. This is why crises always feel surprising. Not because they are unpredictable, but because the early stages are hidden in plain sight. This video explains how financial crises actually begin. Not with panic, not with headlines, but with slow shifts in incentives, behavior, and structure that most people never notice. Financial crises do not start with mistakes. They start with conditions. Conditions that feel reasonable. Conditions that feel stable. Conditions that often feel beneficial at the time. A crisis becomes possible long before it becomes visible. The first condition is prolonged stability. When an economic system functions smoothly for a long period, behavior adapts to that stability. Risk feels manageable. Volatility feels distant. Disruption feels unlikely. This is not irrational behavior. It is learned behavior. People base expectations on recent experience. If nothing has gone wrong for years, the assumption becomes that nothing will go wrong soon. This assumption shapes decisions across the system. Businesses expand. Households borrow. Governments rely on continued growth. Financial institutions increase exposure. Each decision makes sense on its own. Collectively, they change the system's structure. Stability encourages leverage. Leverage increases sensitivity. Sensitivity reduces tolerance for disruption. This chain develops quietly. Another key condition is cheap access to money. When borrowing costs remain low for extended periods, the cost of risk appears smaller than it actually is. Debt becomes easier to carry. Refinancing becomes routine. Short-term obligations feel less threatening. This does not remove risk. It redistributes it. Debt pushes consequences forward in time. It allows today's decisions to be paid for later. As long as refinancing remains possible, the system feels stable. But this stability depends on conditions remaining unchanged. When systems become dependent on continuity, they lose resilience. This is another condition that enables crises. A third condition is misaligned incentives. In complex financial systems, incentives are rarely aligned across time. Short-term performance is rewarded. Long-term stability is abstract. Institutions are evaluated on quarterly results. Governments operate on political cycles. Markets react to immediate signals. This creates pressure to prioritize short-term outcomes. Risk that materializes later is discounted. Again, this is not reckless behavior. It is rational behavior inside the incentive structure. But when many actors respond to the same incentives, the system drifts. Small compromises accumulate. Safeguards are weakened gradually. Margins shrink quietly. Buffers are reduced incrementally. No single step looks dangerous. The danger emerges from accumulation. Another condition is complexity. Modern financial systems are highly complex. They involve layers of contracts, derivatives, intermediaries, and institutions. Complexity improves efficiency. It allows capital to move quickly. It spreads risk across participants. It increases liquidity under normal conditions. But complexity also obscures causality. When outcomes depend on many interconnected components, it becomes difficult to see where stress is building. Signals become noisy. Feedback becomes delayed. Accountability becomes diffuse. This makes early warning difficult. By the time stress becomes obvious, it is already embedded deeply in the system. Another enabling condition is confidence. Confidence is not just psychological. It is structural. Confidence allows markets to function. It allows debt to roll over. It allows institutions to operate smoothly. As long as confidence remains intact, systems can tolerate increasing strain. But confidence is binary. It does not erode evenly. It holds, then breaks. This creates a sharp transition. During the build-up phase, confidence masks fragility. Participants assume stability because stability has persisted. They interpret the absence of disruption as evidence of strength. In reality, it often reflects successful suppression of volatility. Another critical condition is delayed feedback. Financial systems are designed to smooth shocks. Policies absorb pressure. Liquidity supports markets. Interventions stabilize outcomes. These mechanisms reduce short-term pain. They also delay information. When feedback is delayed, behavior does not adjust in real time. Problems grow unnoticed. The system continues operating under outdated assumptions. This delay widens the gap between reality and perception. By the time feedback arrives, adjustment options are limited. Another condition is narrative reinforcement. Economic narratives simplify complexity. They explain outcomes in ways that feel coherent. As long as the narrative supports stability, contradictory signals are dismissed. Rising debt is framed as manageable. Asset inflation is framed as healthy. Slow growth is framed as temporary. Narratives persist because they are useful. They coordinate expectations. But they also blind participants to structural change. When narratives lag reality, risk accumulates. Another enabling condition is unequal visibility. Financial stress does not affect all participants equally. Some feel pressure early. Others feel it later. Households may struggle quietly. Small businesses may adjust slowly. Large institutions may appear unaffected. This uneven impact prevents collective awareness. When pain is fragmented, it feels personal rather than systemic. People adapt individually. They do not interpret stress as a warning sign. This fragmentation delays recognition. It allows stress to grow. Another condition is reliance on historical models. Risk models are built using past data. They assume the future will resemble the past. This works well in stable regimes. It fails during structural shifts. When conditions change, models lag reality. But because models provide reassurance, they continue to be trusted. This reinforces complacency. The system appears under control even as underlying dynamics change. All of these conditions interact. None of them cause crises on their own. But together, they create an environment where crises can form. An environment where risk is tolerated. Where stress is deferred. Where feedback is delayed. Where confidence masks fragility. This is how financial crises actually begin. Not with a collapse, but with a system that appears stable while quietly becoming vulnerable. If financial crises begin with conditions, they continue with signals. But these signals are rarely dramatic. They do not arrive as warnings. They do not demand attention. They do not feel urgent. That is why they are ignored. Most early signals of financial stress are subtle changes in behavior rather than sudden events. They appear in places people are not watching. And when they are noticed, they are usually explained away. One of the earliest signals is a change in borrowing behavior. At first, borrowing increases for reasonable reasons. Businesses borrow to expand. Households borrow to smooth expenses. Governments borrow to stabilize growth. None of this looks dangerous. Debt, in moderation, is a normal part of modern economies. The signal is not the existence of debt. The signal is dependence on it. When refinancing becomes routine rather than occasional, risk changes character. Obligations that were meant to be temporary become permanent. The system stops planning for repayment and starts planning for rollover. This shift is quiet. On the surface, everything still works. Payments are made. Markets function. Credit remains available. But the system becomes sensitive to changes in conditions. Another early signal is narrowing margins. Businesses operate with thinner buffers. Households have less room for unexpected expenses. Governments rely on optimistic projections. These changes are incremental. They are rarely framed as risk. They are framed as efficiency. Efficiency is celebrated. Costs are optimized. Processes are streamlined. Redundancies are removed. In stable conditions, efficiency looks like progress. In stressed systems, it looks like fragility. But fragility is invisible until tested. Another signal is the increasing importance of confidence-based assets. When value depends more on belief than fundamentals, stability becomes psychological. Markets rely on expectations rather than cash flow. Institutions rely on reputation rather than resilience. As long as confidence holds, the system functions. But confidence is not evenly distributed. It tends to persist until it breaks. This creates a false sense of security. People interpret continued confidence as evidence that risks are exaggerated. Another subtle signal is the normalization of interventions. When authorities intervene repeatedly to stabilize outcomes, behavior adjusts. Participants assume support will continue. Risk tolerance increases. The system becomes conditioned on intervention. This does not mean interventions are mistakes. They serve important purposes. But repeated intervention changes expectations. It reduces the perceived cost of risk. And when expectations shift, behavior follows. Another signal is delayed feedback. When actions do not produce immediate consequences, learning slows. People make decisions based on incomplete information. They interpret the absence of immediate pain as validation. This reinforces existing behavior. The system drifts further from balance. Another quiet signal is the clustering of stress. Stress does not rise uniformly. It concentrates in specific sectors. Housing, energy, credit markets, emerging economies. Because these areas are specialized, their struggles are often dismissed. They are seen as isolated problems. Analysts explain them away as sector-specific issues. This interpretation prevents systemic recognition. But these clusters are often early indicators. They reveal where the system is weakest. Another signal is the increasing use of complexity to manage risk. Financial instruments become more sophisticated. Structures become layered. This complexity is meant to distribute risk. It also obscures it. When risk is difficult to trace, it is difficult to assess. People rely on models and ratings. They trust abstractions. This reliance creates blind spots. Another subtle signal is the persistence of optimistic narratives despite contradictory data. When data weakens but narratives remain strong, tension builds. People focus on explanations that preserve stability. Temporary factors are emphasized. Long-term trends are downplayed. This narrative persistence delays adjustment. It keeps behavior aligned with outdated assumptions. Another signal is asymmetry in reactions. Good news produces muted responses. Bad news produces outsized reactions. This imbalance indicates fragility. It suggests the system is more sensitive to downside than upside. But this sensitivity is often misinterpreted. It is framed as volatility rather than vulnerability. Another quiet signal is the gradual erosion of trust. Trust erodes not through dramatic failures, but through accumulation. Small disappointments, missed expectations, policy reversals. Each event is minor. Together, they weaken confidence. But because erosion is slow, it is overlooked. People adapt. They lower expectations. They accept uncertainty. This adaptation masks deterioration. Another signal is the widening gap between perception and experience. Official indicators suggest stability. Personal experience suggests strain. People feel pressure even when data looks positive. This disconnect creates confusion. Individuals question their own perceptions. They assume the problem is personal, not systemic. This prevents collective awareness. Another signal is the rise of defensive behavior. Households save more cautiously. Businesses delay investment. Institutions become selective. These behaviors are rational. They are also revealing. They indicate rising uncertainty. But because they happen gradually, they are not interpreted as warning signs. Another signal is the increasing reliance on short-term solutions. Problems are addressed temporarily. Deadlines are extended. Rules are adjusted. Support is provided. These measures stabilize the present. They also increase future obligations. The system becomes less flexible. But because each measure works in isolation, the cumulative effect is overlooked. Another quiet signal is the absence of clear failure. Paradoxically, the lack of collapse reinforces complacency. People assume that if something were truly wrong, it would already have failed. They underestimate the system's ability to delay consequences. This misjudgment is central to crisis formation. The system appears resilient when it is merely postponing adjustment. All of these signals are visible. None of them feel urgent. They compete with signals of normality. They are drowned out by routine. They are easy to rationalize. This is why crises do not feel obvious in advance. The signals are there. They just do not look like warnings. They look like normal variation inside a functioning system. By the time these signals align and become impossible to ignore, the system has already changed. The crisis has already begun. It just has not been recognized yet. For a long time, financial systems are able to absorb pressure without changing behavior. This ability is not accidental. Modern systems are designed to smooth disruptions, delay consequences, and prevent sudden breakdowns. Liquidity cushions shocks. Institutions redistribute losses. Policies stabilize outcomes. As long as these mechanisms function, stress remains contained. But this containment has limits. The transition from stability to crisis begins when the system reaches a point where it can no longer absorb additional pressure. This point is not marked by collapse. It is marked by constraint. The first sign is not panic. It is rigidity. Flexibility disappears. Actions that were previously easy become difficult. Refinancing becomes selective. Credit becomes conditional. Liquidity becomes uneven. Nothing has failed yet. But the system is no longer forgiving. This is a critical shift. During the absorption phase, errors are tolerated. During the constraint phase, errors are punished. This change often goes unnoticed. Because from the outside, the system still appears operational. Markets still trade. Institutions still function. Daily life continues. But the margin for error has narrowed dramatically. This narrowing is the true beginning of a financial crisis. One of the earliest manifestations of constraint is selective tightening. Lenders do not stop lending altogether. They become more cautious. Terms change quietly. Higher collateral requirements. Shorter maturities. More scrutiny. These changes do not attract headlines. They are framed as prudence. But they alter the system's dynamics. Participants who relied on easy access begin to adjust behavior. Investment slows. Expansion pauses. Risk-taking declines. This adjustment is rational. It is also contagious. When enough actors adjust simultaneously, aggregate behavior changes. The system shifts from expansion to preservation. Another sign of constraint is declining liquidity quality. Liquidity does not disappear uniformly. It concentrates. Some assets remain liquid. Others become difficult to sell. Prices diverge. This divergence reveals underlying risk. But because it happens unevenly, it is often dismissed as technical noise. In reality, it signals that the system is differentiating between perceived safety and perceived risk. This differentiation accelerates stress. Assets deemed safe attract capital. Assets deemed risky lose it. The movement reinforces itself. Another manifestation of constraint is sensitivity to news. During stable periods, negative information is absorbed. Markets recover quickly. Confidence remains intact. During constrained periods, the same information produces outsized reactions. Small surprises cause large movements. This sensitivity indicates fragility. The system is no longer able to absorb uncertainty. Each new piece of information is interpreted pessimistically. This shift in interpretation matters more than the information itself. Another critical change is behavioral synchronization. Earlier, stress was fragmented. Different actors adjusted at different times. During constraint, behavior aligns. Businesses cut spending together. Households reduce consumption simultaneously. Institutions tighten conditions in unison. This synchronization transforms individual caution into systemic contraction. The system begins to amplify stress rather than absorb it. Another sign is the reversal of confidence dynamics. Confidence does not erode gradually. It flips. Participants who were optimistic become cautious. Cautious participants become defensive. This flip is often triggered by a symbolic event. Not because the event is large, but because it confirms existing doubt. A failed transaction. A missed target. An unexpected policy signal. These events act as coordination points. They align perception. Once aligned, behavior changes rapidly. This alignment is what makes crises feel sudden. But the alignment is only possible because constraint already exists. Another manifestation of constraint is institutional hesitation. During absorption phases, institutions act decisively. They provide support. They stabilize markets. They communicate confidence. During constraint phases, hesitation appears. Decisions are delayed. Language becomes cautious. Commitments become conditional. This hesitation is often misinterpreted as incompetence or fear. In reality, it reflects limited options. Interventions that worked before now carry higher costs. Support risks moral hazard. Inaction risks instability. The system has fewer good choices. Another important signal is the emergence of forced behavior. Participants are compelled to act not because they choose to, but because they must. Margin calls are triggered. Covenants are breached. Regulatory thresholds are crossed. These mechanisms are automatic. They do not respond to context. They enforce adjustment abruptly. This abruptness contributes to the feeling of crisis. Because behavior changes not gradually, but suddenly. Another aspect of constraint is the breakdown of coordination. During stable periods, participants share expectations. They assume others will behave predictably. During constraint, uncertainty increases. Participants are unsure how others will react. This uncertainty reduces trust. Trust is a key lubricant in financial systems. When trust declines, transactions slow. Markets become thin. Liquidity dries up further. This reinforces constraint. Another signal is the shift from optimization to survival. During expansion, systems optimize. They seek efficiency. They pursue growth. They accept risk. During constraint, priorities change. Preservation replaces optimization. Liquidity replaces return. Safety replaces yield. This shift affects pricing, behavior, and outcomes. It is a systemic change, not a temporary adjustment. Another manifestation of constraint is narrative breakdown. Earlier narratives that explain stability become less convincing. Explanations feel forced. Contradictions accumulate. People sense inconsistency. This erodes confidence further. But narrative breakdown does not immediately produce clarity. It produces confusion. Participants are unsure which story to trust. This uncertainty delays decisive action. It also increases volatility. Another important factor is the loss of redundancy. Redundancy allows systems to adapt. It provides alternative pathways. During prolonged stability, redundancy is reduced. Costs are cut. Backup systems are removed. This makes the system efficient. It also makes it brittle. When stress exceeds capacity, there are no buffers left. Adjustment becomes abrupt. This is another reason crises escalate quickly. Another sign that the system has stopped absorbing stress is the appearance of feedback loops. Actions taken to reduce risk create additional risk. Selling reduces prices, triggering more selling. Credit tightening reduces activity, increasing defaults. These loops are not intentional. They emerge from structure. Once feedback loops dominate, containment fails. The system enters a phase of self-reinforcing contraction. This phase defines the transition from hidden crisis to visible crisis. Importantly, this transition is not always accompanied by immediate collapse. There can be periods of uneasy stability. Markets may stabilize briefly. Confidence may partially return. But the underlying constraint remains. The system has crossed a threshold. It no longer absorbs stress efficiently. It reacts to it. This reactivity defines the crisis phase. The key insight is this: crises do not begin when things fall apart. They begin when the system loses its ability to absorb mistakes. From that point on, normal behavior produces abnormal outcomes. Actions that were once safe become dangerous. Strategies that worked before fail. This is why financial crises feel confusing. People behave rationally based on past experience. But the system they are operating in has changed. The rules are no longer the same. The system has shifted from absorption to exposure. From flexibility to constraint. From stability to fragility. This shift is the true beginning of a financial crisis. The visible breakdown may come later. But by the time it arrives, the system has already crossed the line. When financial crises become visible, they appear to arrive all at once. Markets fall rapidly. Institutions fail suddenly. Confidence collapses seemingly overnight. This creates the illusion of surprise. But the speed of collapse does not mean the crisis formed quickly. It means the system crossed a threshold. For a long time, stress accumulated beneath the surface. When that accumulation reached a critical level, change accelerated. This is a common feature of complex systems. They absorb pressure gradually, then respond abruptly. The key reason crises feel sudden is nonlinear behavior. Financial systems do not respond proportionally to stress. Small changes can have no visible effect for long periods. Then a similar change produces a dramatic outcome. This nonlinearity confuses observers. People expect gradual adjustment. Instead, they experience rapid transition. Another reason crises feel sudden is delayed recognition. Many participants recognize risk privately before it becomes public. They adjust quietly. They reduce exposure. They increase liquidity. They become defensive. These adjustments do not appear in headlines. They are invisible to the broader public. When recognition becomes collective, behavior shifts rapidly. What felt gradual internally becomes sudden externally. Another factor is coordination. Crises accelerate when expectations align. Once enough participants expect deterioration, actions synchronize. Selling accelerates. Lending contracts. Spending declines. This synchronization magnifies movement. The system shifts from dispersed adjustment to collective response. This transition happens quickly. Another reason crises feel abrupt is the role of confidence. Confidence is cumulative. It supports valuations, liquidity, and trust. But it is also fragile. Confidence often persists longer than conditions justify. When it breaks decisively. This creates sharp discontinuities. One moment, systems function normally. The next, they do not. This sharp break is not random. It reflects delayed reassessment. Another factor is institutional constraint. When stress becomes visible, options are limited. Interventions that could have worked earlier are less effective. Responses feel reactive rather than preventive. This reinforces the perception of sudden failure. In reality, the window for smooth adjustment closed earlier. Another reason crises feel unexpected is narrative lag. Narratives explain the past. They do not anticipate structural change well. As long as narratives persist, people feel oriented. When narratives fail, orientation collapses. This creates a sense of shock. People struggle to understand what changed. The answer is often uncomfortable. The system changed gradually. Perception changed suddenly. Another contributor is the media cycle. Media attention concentrates during visible disruption. Earlier signals receive little coverage. Later events dominate headlines. This skews perception. The public experiences the crisis when it becomes newsworthy, not when it becomes inevitable. Another reason is personal experience. Individuals experience stress at different times. Some feel it early. Others feel it later. When stress becomes widespread, it feels sudden collectively. But individually, many have been adapting for some time. This fragmentation delays awareness. Another factor is memory. People remember outcomes more clearly than processes. They remember crashes, not buildup. This biases interpretation. Past crises are recalled as sudden events. This reinforces the belief that crises appear without warning. Another reason is the complexity of causation. Crises rarely have a single cause. They emerge from interaction. This makes early explanation difficult. Without clear causation, warning feels speculative. People wait for confirmation. By the time confirmation arrives, adjustment is forced. Another contributor is institutional signaling. Authorities often emphasize stability to prevent panic. This communication is well-intentioned. It also delays recognition. When messaging shifts, the contrast feels dramatic. This amplifies shock. Another reason crises feel abrupt is threshold behavior. Systems tolerate stress until a limit is reached. Beyond that limit, behavior changes qualitatively. Liquidity disappears. Prices gap. Institutions fail. The transition is not linear. It is phase change. Another factor is human psychology. People anchor to recent experience. They underestimate change. They extrapolate stability. This bias persists until contradicted forcefully. When contradiction arrives, beliefs adjust rapidly. This rapid adjustment feels like surprise. Another reason is structural rigidity. As systems become rigid, they resist small adjustments. This increases the likelihood of large ones. Small problems accumulate. Large corrections follow. This pattern repeats across crises. Another contributor is policy lag. Policies respond to data. Data reflects the past. This lag means responses trail reality. By the time action occurs, conditions have changed. This makes responses appear late. Another reason crises feel sudden is the illusion of control. As long as systems function, participants believe risks are managed. When control fails, the contrast is stark. The loss of control feels abrupt. Another factor is the invisibility of thresholds. Thresholds are not marked. They are discovered by crossing them. Until crossed, they are theoretical. After crossing, they are obvious. This makes crises appear unpredictable. In reality, thresholds existed all along. They were simply unknown. The final reason crises feel sudden is that visibility is backward-looking. We identify crises after they are visible. We label beginnings retroactively. This creates a distorted timeline. The true beginning is far earlier. The recognized beginning is late. Understanding this gap matters, because it changes how crises are interpreted. Financial crises do not begin with collapse. They begin with slow shifts that alter system behavior. They feel sudden because recognition lags reality. By the time collapse becomes visible, the process is largely complete. This is not a flaw in awareness. It is a feature of complex systems. They hide their vulnerabilities until they cannot. This is how financial crises actually begin. Financial crises rarely begin with collapse. They begin with systems that appear stable while quietly changing underneath. By the time disruption becomes visible, the most important shifts have already occurred. Incentives have changed. Constraints have tightened. Behavior has adjusted. What feels sudden is often the moment when reality becomes impossible to ignore. Understanding how crises actually begin does not make them predictable. But it does make them less mysterious. It explains why warning signs are missed, why confidence holds longer than expected, and why outcomes feel disconnected from causes. Modern financial systems are designed to absorb stress. They are also designed to delay consequences. That combination creates the conditions for sudden change. If you want clear, calm explanations of how money, power, and economic systems actually work, you can subscribe to this channel. New long-form videos are released regularly, focusing on structure, incentives, and the forces that shape everyday life. Thank you for watching.